Please note, the views and opinions expressed in this virtual event and presentation are solely those of the individual artists in their personal capacity and are not reflective of nor represent official policy, position, or views of New Jersey City University.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Stephanie Chaikin. I'm the director of the Center for the Arts at NJCU, and it is a joy to have you with us this afternoon. On behalf of the Center for the Arts and President Henderson, the English Department Student Events and Publications Committee, and the Center for Latin American, Caribbean, and Latinx Studies at NJCU, it's just great welcome to you today. We are going to have a conversation with filmmaker Nancy Savoca, moderated by Professor Edwidge Junta. And Sabrina is going to give a little housekeeping notes, and then we'll kind of take it away.
So all of you will be muted for the duration of this event. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the chat box. If you don't know how to access chat, you're going to look at the bottom of your window, sometimes top right if you're on a mobile device. You'll see a button that says chat. If you click that, you can open the chat window and type in there, and your questions will be read aloud to be answered, okay?
Terrific. So I know there's people here from your class, Dr. Junta, but for everyone else that has been welcome today, you are an award-winning educator as well as an acclaimed writer and editor, very well loved. And Dr. Junta's books include Teaching Italian American Literature, Film, and Popular Culture, and Personal Effects, essays on memoir, teaching, and culture in the work of Luis de Salvo. Dr. Junta was awarded an OSLA Book Club selection for Italian American writers in New Jersey, and the Educator of the Year award for the higher education category from the Association of Italian American Educators, among others. I know everyone's saying they'll do anything for you, so welcome, welcome. Please start us off.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you to the Center for doing so much organizational work. You know, technology can be quite daunting, so it takes some work and some focus, some energy, and really a good attitude to put together these events. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity. One of the things I've loved to do at NJCU is organize events, which I've been doing ever since I started teaching at NJCU. So this is one of the losses, not to be able to do these events on campus. But hey, you know, we are not defeated, and here we are, and we start our events this semester with Nancy Savoca, and that makes it particularly special for me. And I will tell you why. In a minute. Again, I want to remind everyone, not just my beloved students with whom I had a great discussion about dogfight, to post your questions on chat, and we have Donia and Rosa will help us, and we'll read your question with your name. If you don't want your name to be read aloud, please specify so in your question. So I was thinking yesterday, you know, what can I say about Nancy Savoca? And I have been talking about Nancy Savoca for about 30 years. So sometimes when you get to know someone really well, you can find yourself at a loss for words. And I wanted to find something like to say that captures what is for me so captivating and compelling about the work of this extraordinary filmmaker. And among the many things that she does in her storytelling is that she digs into the underbelly of everyday lives. That she takes domestic contexts, quotidian interactions, you know, what we think of as almost inconsequential, and she shows us another side. And she does that with grace and mercilessness. So that the characters that she creates are both incredibly endearing, but also they make us very, very uncomfortable. And that power to be able to stay with that discomfort on screen. And film is such a smooth medium where you can use all sorts of strategies and devices to take away discomfort. The ability that Nancy Savoca has to take discomfort and make it central in her cinematic storytelling is really something. Um, in my book and in some of my articles, I have written about the way in which Nancy uses silence. And you know, being Sicilian, as is Nancy's is as well, there's a great Sicilian proverb that says, "The best word is the one that remains unspoken." And this proverb, of course, is rooted in a cultural tradition of silence and resistance that has to do with Sicilian history. And I think often about this proverb because there are so many situations in life where we find ourselves unable to speak. And silence sometimes can be a powerful tool for expression. Nancy Savoca's first film, True Love, was immediately recognized as one of a kind film at the Sundance Film Festival, where he received the grand prize, and she also was recognized by a Spirit Award for Best Director. Each and every one of her films stand out in their own way. Dogfight, which is one of the films that we'll be focusing on today, Household Saints, and the 24-hour woman, and another extraordinary film, Dirt, which I've taught many times in my immigrant literature classes, which was also recognized by the Latino International Film Festival. And I'm certainly not alone in recognizing the greatness of this filmmaker. Well, her collection, her film collection, is already part of the University of Michigan Film Mavericks collection, alongside with the archives of Orson Welles, Robert Altman, and their mentors, John Sayles and Jonathan Demme. But let me get a little bit more personal because this filmmaker whose work I love, I have studied, I have taught, has really changed my life long before I met her. I was a newly graduated PhD from the University of Miami with a dissertation on James Joyce and the specialization in modernism and Victorian literature. And I was well on my way to become a Joyce scholar. And then I went to Boston for a conference and I stayed with a friend, a Greek American friend. And she said, "Oh, we had to watch this movie, True Love. You'll love it." I didn't just love it. I sat there mesmerized and I felt that my life had to change. And when I went back home, I started ordering books by Italian American women writers. It was 1990, so there weren't many books available by Italian American women. And my work really became focused on creating, on helping create recognition for Italian American women authors. And that really has ended up shaping a lot of my work at New Jersey City University, where the lessons that I learned in helping shape a literary tradition and movement have really been instrumental in my work as a teacher of memoir. And I'm very proud of the incredible community of writers that we have collectively created at NJCU. So Nancy, not only I have to say thank you for inspiring 25 years of work I've done on Italian American women writers, but you've actually, in many ways, are responsible also for my work teaching memoir. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here with us. So I thought I would start things off by asking you a few questions, which will give people a few minutes to start thinking about what they might like to ask. I'm including dogfights in a course on women in literature. And we have a great range of authors, both in terms of nationality, ethnicity, also historically speaking. So we have Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and then we have Maza Mengistu, a contemporary Ethiopian American writer. Um, we are not watching many films because this is primarily a literature class, but filmmakers, especially some filmmakers, are also writers. So we started out actually with Eva DuVernay's short film August 28th. So my first question to you is, when did you know that you wanted to tell your stories through film?
Oh, that's such a good question. And it's funny, it makes me so happy when I hear you talk about how watching True Love illuminated something for you in your life. And I think many of us can say that there's a moment when we see something or read something, or a light bulb goes off and I go, I think this has something to do with me in a big, big way. And for me, there are two moments that I can put out. One is when actually I started thinking about film and making movies. And this sounds strange because I was 11 years old and it was through a book. So we feed each other books, movies, music, photography. We all feed each other. I was in middle school. I was in 6th grade in the Bronx, in a very interesting school in a very troubled neighborhood in 1971. And my English teacher, her name was Honey Levine, and she was like so groovy. She wore like mini skirts and go-go boots to class. And she had us reading some very interesting things for 11-year-olds. And one day she said, I'd like you guys to read a book called Down These Mean Streets, because it has something to do with the neighborhood you're growing up in. And she said, the only thing you have to do is you must get permission from your parents to read it, because it's a mature book. So I went home and I asked my mother, who didn't speak English, can I read? You know, the teacher says you got to sign this permission slip. I didn't even want to tell her what it was about. I was like, you got to sign this permission slip so I can read this book. And she was like, and then she kind of went, what's this book? And then my brother was listening, and my brother said, Mom, it's a dirty book. So I'm like, oh no, like I really want to read the book. And my mom was really in a quandary because she didn't know. Language stood in the way of her understanding what was going on. And the only thing, as a good Catholic mom, she said, why don't you take this letter to the priest at Holy Cross Church, which is down the block from us. And if the priest says it's okay to read the book, then you can, well, sign it. So I decided I didn't want the priest to tell me if I could read the book. And I never said that in confession, but I decided not to. And I forged my mom's signature. And I read the book, and it was like an explosion. It was like that moment you're talking about when you see in the movie. It's like, this has something very, very big to do with me. And it was someone telling a story. Am I getting cut off? I suddenly hear. I'm okay? Sound-wise, I'm okay? Okay. So a little hiss that was there is suddenly gone. But that was the beginning of, as I read the book, I could see a movie in my head. And I was like, I hope somebody makes this movie. And to say, no, I don't know anyone who hasn't made the movie, who has made the movie. But I saw my English teacher a couple of years ago when we did Union Square, when we had a screening of Union Square, and I got to meet her again after so many years. And I said, Miss Levine, you changed my life with Down These Mean Streets. Whatever made you think that an 11-year-old should read that book? I mean, it's heavy. If anybody knows that book, it's heavy. And she said, Piri Thomas's son went to our school. And I didn't know that. So Piri Thomas's son was in my school. I had an incredible school, incredible teachers, and that started me on film. And then I saw John Cassavetes' movie Husband, and that kind of did it for me. I was 17 for that. So yeah, very, very exciting when that moment comes in your life and you go, oh, I know what this is about. It's about me, you know? Cool.
Wow. That's what a great story.
Thank you, Miss Levine.
Thank you, Miss Levine. So film is a collaborative art. I think any artistic creation is collaborative. We bring to our work a lot of people, dead, living, our ghosts, the ghosts we love and the ones we don't like so much, which sometimes can be our best source of inspiration. But as a filmmaker, you find yourself in the position to also select the actors who are going to embody the story that you want to tell. And you make always such phenomenal choices in the casting of your films. And in particular, I wanna just pay homage to some of the incredible women with whom you have worked. Mira Sorvino, Annabelle Shore, Lily Taylor, Rosie Perez, and the choices that you make are always just so perfect. I was wondering whether you could talk a little bit about that process, how you find the right actors for your films, and then how does it work? How do you bring the character to the screen? What kind of collaboration do you establish with your actors?
Wow, those are two great big questions. I'll do the mini version answer. In terms of casting, each movie was different for a while. For example, True Love, we couldn't afford a casting director all the time. So we worked with different casting directors because it took us 6 years to get that movie financed. So we did bits and pieces here and there. And many of our actors came from Backstage, which is the actors' news. Back in the day, it was the newspaper. Now it's online. And by the way, you can still get wonderful actors on Backstage online. My daughter just did a short film and brilliantly cast it from online. So Annabella answered an ad in Backstage, walked in, and we went, okay, she's it. She's it. There was no question. And then Annabelle was one of the first people we cast for True Love. And then Ron Eldard, who played her boyfriend, gonna be husband, was one of the last people we found. We did a 2-year search for him. True Love was tricky because we couldn't use Screen Actors Guild. We were so low budget, we couldn't use union. So that was it. With Dogfight is when I met Lily Taylor. Dogfight was, River Phoenix was already cast. They had gone through a couple of directors. Due to the subject matter, they were very nervous about the movie. And then because I worked with Warner Brothers, it was a Hollywood film, even though it feels so indie, it was a Hollywood studio that financed it. They worked with Marion Doherty. If you are interested in casting actors, if you're interested in what goes on for that, I highly recommend a documentary called Casting By. That's on HBO, I believe. And it begins as the story of Marion Doherty, who was the giant casting director that I got to work with, lucky me, for Dogfight. She presented every future superstar like that I could meet at that day. I met so many amazingly talented actors through Marianne because she had an eye for James Dean, Marlon Brando, Al Pacino. You name the actors from the 50s and 60s, and she probably discovered them. It's one woman. So that's a wonderful person I got to work with. And in each movie, I find a different, been working with different casting directors. And for Dirt, I flew to Mexico City and, looked at a bunch of actors from Mexico. I had tried going to El Salvador because it was a Salvadoran story and couldn't connect to any theater or anything, make a connection to actors there. So I ended up working with actors from Mexico, but I had a Mexican casting director that Alfonso Cuarón turned me on to actually back then, yeah. So each one different. And how do I work with actors? In a nutshell, I hope to post, I don't know, in the coming weeks on YouTube, a workshop that I do live. I did it on Zoom in June, I think. And I just have to edit it. And I'm going to do it with different language subtitles. I want to put it out there as a workshop of directors working with actors. Because I've actually made it like into I have a little formula that I realize I do. And I think it's kind of universal that any director could work with. So I'm trying to simplify the explanation of what happens, and I'm going to put it out on YouTube. So at some point you'll get this.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one more question and then we're going to open it up. So make sure that you type your questions for Nancy. And so as I said, in this class, we focused on Dogfight, which is your second film. And although there are some very interesting connections between your first film, True Love, and Dogfight, in the way in which you really look at the issue of intimacy. They're dramatically different films in tone, in narrative, in setting, in all sorts of ways. And the film is such an interesting story because you read, it's based on a script by Bob Comfort, who was an ex-Marine, and he wrote the script based on his own life experiences. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the history of making this film or coming across this script. What made you decide that that's a script that you wanted to work with for your film, and maybe give us a little bit about the behind the stage of the making of Dogfight.
Okay, so how I got to that story was that I had just finished when I finished True Love. We were, as somebody from the neighborhood said, "Hey, who's in this movie?" He walked by while we were shooting True Love, and we said, "Nobody." And he said, "Is it Danny Aiello in this movie?" And he said, "No." He says, "Nobody's in this movie." And he walked away. So nobody was in the movie. Nobody directed it. It was a first-time film with all wonderfully unknown talent, who of course then went on to have really wonderful work ahead of them. So when we completed True Love, we submitted it to Sundance and won the grand jury prize. That changed my life, made it upside down, completely changed my life. Also because we were in a time when, for the first time in a new cycle, independent film was popular. Literally the night before I went to sleep, before Sundance, there was no independent film that was popular at that moment. And it suddenly began with that year with Sex Lies Videotape, True Love, the Michael Moore documentary that I'm forgetting the name of. All those came out from the class of '89. We call ourselves the class of '89. So that opened up the door to Hollywood. And they actually asked for me to go out there. I had a brand newborn baby with me. I brought the baby with me. To go meet with all these studio heads. And I got the script for Dogfight soon after True Love won, but I had a newborn baby and I decided I didn't want to go, knowing what production is, I said no. And I said, but if in the future this script for any reason is still available, and it was a year later. And so I came on it, but River Phoenix was already attached. And as I said before, it was a story that had been around for a couple of years, and Warner Brothers could not figure out how to do it. And I think they felt ultimately, when they met with me, that to have a woman director on was the answer for them. That's what I understood. So I was kind of a gun for hire. This wasn't something I initiated. Behind the scenes, I have so many stories. We'll end up here for 4 hours.
Okay, so maybe
your students will ask me some questions.
Yes. Okay, so I think we're going to give an opportunity to some of the people who joined us to ask questions. So Donia or Rosa, do you wanna just give us the first question?
Sure. So the first question is from Ryan Kelly.
Ryan, wait.
So he said, I have a question for Ms. Savoca regarding if these walls could talk. The film explores women's reproductive rights from 3 different time periods, 1952, 1974, and 1996. And here we are 14 years later, and the fight wages on. What would a 2020 story look like in an updated version of If These Walls Could Talk?
Oh, wow. I think more frustration, more, I don't know how it is different because the problem is still the same. I mean, one of the things I think that was, and again, a project that was initiated by Demi Moore, that project, but one of the things that was very important for Demi, that anyone who signed on, including myself, was very important for all of us, was to humanize the problem, to humanize this issue, so that it was less about, this is how I feel as an idea, but there are actually women in these situations. And if we can if we can see the story, we can probably begin to understand how not black and white it is and how gray everything is. And the bottom line for me has always been that I cannot judge somebody's life on any front. I cannot judge somebody's life. The only thing I can judge is if it's someone who's, actually, no, I can't judge somebody's life. I mean, that's one of the things. I think that's part of art too, is that you really come from this place of exploration and not having a black and white, you know, the movies that are most exciting to me is not when the filmmaker says, I'm going to tell you what to think, but more like, this really scares me, confuses me, enrages me. I have to work this through. And then they give us a movie and then we join them in working this through, as opposed to being told what to think. That to me is what you call beautiful art, beautiful work. Yes, unfortunately, that continues to be a problem. Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy. So, Donia, so as Nancy finishes with her answers, then you can go on to the next question.
Okay, the next question is from Susan Murphy. Do you have any work in the pipeline, and what are your current interests in terms of theme, material, and intention?
Yes, I always have current work in the pipeline. Whether or not Hollywood or production companies want to finance them is a very separate question, which I hope somebody could ask somebody. But we are actually, I'm working right now on a very exciting project that was going to be a television series that got put in turnaround. And now we have the freedom to do it as an indie film. So I'm very excited by it. Right now it's called Sanctuary. I don't know if it will be called that when we're done. But it's an exploration of immigration now. I've done a couple of immigration movies. That's a topic I'm very interested in because I'm the daughter of two immigrants. So, and grew up in a neighborhood full of immigrants from all over. So that always interests me. And I'm working with Maysoon Zaid, who is a wonderful stand-up comedian and actress. You can probably look her up. She's got a really incredible TED Talk. So it's Maysoon, like the month of May will come soon, and Zaid, Z-A-Y-I-D. So I'm working with her as one of our actors, and it's a road trip movie to the border is kind of what's happening. Kind of comedic, kind of, in a weird way. Because, you know, I have a comedian on, so I gotta be funny, I hope. So that and yes, and, you know, just other projects that I'm working on, that I'm writing on. Manuel Puig is the writer of Kiss of the Spider Woman, the novel Kiss of the Spider Woman. I think his life is super interesting. So I've got a project that I'm developing on him. Yeah. And other things.
Okay, so our next question is from Luis Alonso. Do you believe women are more liberated now because of movies and actors such as Lady Gaga, Madonna, etc.? Do you think cultural movements in music and acting can change the prejudices women face?
Oh, I think culture absolutely can help us understand each other better. I think you know, I think that there should be, we have true freedom, oh God, liberation is an interesting word. Who's free of gender roles? Men and women, people who don't, non-binary, like who's free? I don't know about that. I don't know about that answer. But just in terms of, I think if an artist is in charge of their image, there's certainly some freedom there. Sometimes when you're in the big machine, whether it's Hollywood or corporate music and whatever, the image gets manipulated by people who are counting how much, how many fans will buy the records depending on what people look like. Just witness all the issues that actresses talk about, whether it's their looks, their weight, their age, becomes issues in ways that may not be for other actors. So is it better today? I think it's better today because when I was growing up, I looked desperately for role models and I didn't have that many. I didn't find that many women that were kind of like what I was interested. And I realized when I was a kid, my role models, and I didn't realize this till I was an adult, were 3 comedians: Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, and Lily Tomlin, because they were not dependent on their sexy image to reach us. So I thought that was very interesting. I also liked sexy actresses. I love Sophia Loren with a passion. I love Hannah Magnani. I don't think she falls into a different category. So I think that I was very attracted to role models that didn't depend on someone else's eye to identify them, that came from identifying themselves and putting themselves out there. Does that make sense? So that to me is liberation, is when you as a person feel that you've got something that you want to put out there, as whether you're a performer, right? I hide behind the camera, so it's less for me, but to feel that that I don't have to adjust to people's expectations, that I'm here, something to say, something to contribute, here I am, that's liberation. So I think some people have it and some people don't, and we have to keep pressing for it and be aware that that's kind of what it's about, that all these images that we see of all these folks out there, all our performers, many of them are manipulated, especially with social media. It's so interesting now. So you have to, I think, if you educate yourself to what does someone look like when they're not manipulated, that's the person we want to see. I think that's what's, for me, very satisfying for me,
Thank you. Our next question is from Nicole Duan. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Her question is, do you ever begin to free write, not knowing what it will become or what purpose it serves? What do you do or tell yourself to become comfortable with the uncertainty of storytelling?
I think I don't like free writing. It's scary. I like free walking. I love to walk. I love to, I get a lot of ideas when I'm walking, so much so that sometimes I have to have like something to, I record into my phone or I write something down, but because everything comes really quickly when I'm moving. Well, I'm not a good person sitting down, which is a drag when you're writing a script, but yeah, I like to move a lot. So free walking and then catch all those ideas and put them somewhere for me. And was the second question was, how do you become?
The second question is, what do you do or tell yourself to become comfortable with the uncertainty of storytelling?
That's great. I guess it depends on the story, because I have things that I'm afraid of. Every story gives me something else to be afraid of. But I think one thing I remember that happened from True Love, that I ended up helping a woman, a student who was writing a screenplay who had a similar problem, and I didn't realize this is how I had solved it. She was Moroccan, writing a story about a wedding, an arranged marriage and a wedding, this student. And at one point, she had a beautiful script, and at one point there was a scene that was really a moment of opening up and honesty. And that scene just was so different from the others. Like there was all this wonderful energy, and then that scene just got like flat. So we were exploring what that issue was. And then she confessed to me that a lot of these incidents were based on true real life stories. And she was really afraid that her friends and family would then see the movie and never talk to her again, which is a very good thing to be afraid of. If you're going to use your life, you know, people will get pissed, you know, if they recognize themselves. So I get it. That's, you know, but then I realized that when I did True Love, it was the same issue. I had the same situation. And how I solved it was that I started doing research on these weddings in these borough, outer borough, I guess they call them, because it was a Bronx wedding, right? So I started doing research on ethnic weddings, Bronx weddings, weddings in small towns, small communities, insular weddings. I started interviewing people in the Bronx. Talk to me about your wedding. What was it like? I started interviewing, you know, older people about their wedding in the 40s and 30s. Like I started interviewing, and I became like Margaret Mead. And when I became a social anthropologist, it empowered me to not be afraid, because all I'm doing is studying. I'm not reaching into my soul. I'm reaching into my soul, but I'm tricking myself that I'm not. And that really helped me, because I could still put so much of myself in it, but it was kind of wrapped with a universality that liberated me. Does that make sense? I was like, if it was about everybody, then it's about all of us, and then it's okay. If it's just about me, then I'm alone, and I'm telling you my secrets. And that never sits well with me. I don't like telling my secrets.
Thank you. Our next question is from Gabrielle Lauria. Her question is, do Americans expect different standards of gender roles of people from non-Eurocentric cultures?
I think, you know, all of us who have subcultures, all of us who come from subcultures are very we're bicultural, at least, if not multicultural on some levels, where, you know, you're one way with your parents, you're one way with your friends that might be to come from different places. And then you're one way when you put on that professional self. Rosie Perez said, "You want me to put on my white lady voice?" When we did the last scene where she's pitching a show on 24-Hour Woman, she goes, "You want me to do that voice?" I'm like, "Yes, do that voice, because you're pitching. Of course, you're not going to be the same person you're with, you know, other people." So I think we become different people, and gender roles included. I think, gosh, when I visit my family in Sicily and Argentina, I'll tell you, definitely, I am very aware of the gender roles that my mom grew up with, and that are still, I see the young women still kind of trying to, you know, redefine them. I'm excited actually by seeing the young women trying to redefine them. And I go there and I nudge them. I'm a troublemaker.
Thank you. Our next question is from Lanny Lanzalato, sorry. I'd love to hear you talk about how you sculpted one moment in the film. For example, one of my favorite images and actions of yours is the poker game outside the butcher's shop, Meat Locker. Can you give us insight into how you shaped the shot and directed the moment where the freezer is opened, or the scene with Lily Taylor punches River Phoenix in the bar?
Oh, okay. So two different movies, two different moments. I love them too. You know, it's funny. It's like the thing about filmmaking that I love so much is that you begin with a couple of ideas alone by yourself, either on a walk or in a room when you finally do get to sit down with the paper. You have these like ideas, but then you bring them to other people and everyone starts throwing in their magic and their beautiful talent. And what ends up on screen is this powerful source that's coming from many people doing their jobs brilliantly. My biggest talent, I can say this, is that I'm a really good cheerleader for creative people. Like when I'm in sync with someone creatively, like I want them to be geniuses because it only helps the movie. So with Household Saints, I was working with Bobby Bukowski, who was my cinematographer, and I was working with Kalina Ivanov, who was my production designer. I was working with Vince D'Onofrio and Mike Rispoli and Victor Argo, the actors. And we, all of us together, worked on that scene where the guys, which opens the movie, where the guy's playing cards. And the overhead shot, I know, was was an idea that I started with and then handed over to Bobby Bukowski, and then he just, you know, showed me what he was doing, and it was like this beautiful painting. But I just thought that the movie really began, well, yes, the wine spills, but then the overhead is the God's point of view, because that movie is very much about the divine energy that's in everybody's life. You know, like, oh, how come you met this person and that happened? Oh, because sometimes things are meant to happen. You know, sometimes it's like a card game. You know, it's like a gamble, and these things happen. That also, let's add that I was working with beautiful material written by Francine Prose, the novelist. So I got her material, sat with that, brought in a DP, a production designer, beautiful actors, great music, Stephen Endelman. It just, you know, it just goes on. All the people that work with you on a film contribute. And with Lily punching River and Dogfight, I'm trying to remember how that was originally written. We actually worked on that screenplay, but we were not members of the Writers Guild, and I was not a member of the Directors Guild. So we were non-union filmmakers, so we don't have credit on it. But my husband, Richard Gay, and I did do some revisions. As we met with Lily and River, we noticed that there were things that they were bringing to the characters that needed to be reflected in the script. Lily just brought this assertiveness that, and she questioned every time Rose did not take Eddie to task. And I loved that, because I was questioning him too. And I thought I was pretty tough on him as I was doing revisions. But then Lily came along and went, and how about here? And how about here? And I'm like, whoa, you're right. I would not stand for that. You know, we would just keep working on it. And River would keep contributing with, okay, so if she's going to do that, then I'm going to do this. And we kept adjusting. So yeah, the punch, I think, evolved from reactions that we were talking about, what happens when you find out someone's betrayed you like that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Rosa. What inspired you to do Dirt? What brought you to explore the Salvadorian immigrant experience?
So I was living in upstate New York, in the suburbs, and when I was a kid, the Latin community in New York was very Caribbean. I grew up mostly with people mostly from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, some Cuba, some people from Cuba in the 60s, but very few people from Mexico and Central America. That started changing, I think, in like the late 80s and early 90s. And during the 90s, I was living upstate in Rockland County, and a friend of mine started a reading group for the kids that were coming, these immigrant kids that were coming in. And I volunteered to babysit, because I can't teach reading to kids. I'm not trained for that. And then as I volunteered to babysit, because the moms would bring the children to this class for their older kids. They would bring their babies along just to make sure they kept an eye on their children, make sure that they weren't just handing them over to adults they didn't know who they were. They were very protective, which is what my mom would have done. So while these women were there, I started talking to them, and just like my mother, they were not learning English. Their jobs kept them away from people. They were cleaning houses and things like that. So they weren't learning English. So we started a program to bring in an English tutor. And again, I stayed babysitting. There was an English tutor thing. But at the end of the class, all of these women would come to pick up their children. We were just another corner of the room. We were all in the same place. And they started, I don't know, I have a sign in the back that says, tell me your story. They started telling me their stories. And they started telling me how they got to the US. And I realized that it was something that nobody knew, that I had no idea was going on. And this was early when no one's was talking about, you know, how you walk through the desert. But one woman in particular that I knew, her with her twin sons, walked with her 4-year-old twin boys, walked through the desert with a group of people and a coyote and all that. And so all of these stories were starting to really bother me. Because I was holding on to, you know, they were telling me, I hadn't even told the women yet what I did for a living. I was just their babysitter. But one day I said to them, I said, look, I would love to tell a story where I combine your stories. And I'm a filmmaker and I'll see if I can get this made somehow. Do you give me permission to do that? And do you feel comfortable? I don't have to use all parts of anybody's stories. Let me know if there's anything I can't do. I'm not going to mention names. No one's going to get in trouble. Many people were undocumented. So they, not only did they say, yes, please say it, tell it. They actually were super helpful, like working with the actors. And at the end we had, they were in the movie. A lot of people were in the movie. And then we had screenings in my living room for everybody to see the film when it was done. So it really came from me meeting these families and these kids, and also the connection I made with my mother. That definitely, it's even worse. It is so much worse today, but that feeling of like just landing in a new country, and anybody who comes to you and offers support is someone that's like your angel. And I remember my mom always saying that. So that combination of personal with my new experience from other families made me want to tell the stories. Yeah. And Sanctuaries kind of like picks up where that left off, because the stories don't stop.
Thank you. I think we have time for 2 more questions, right? 1 or 2 more? Okay. Our next question is from Julia Nulian. Did you go to film school? If so, did it teach you a lot?
Yes, I went to film school, and yes, it taught me a lot. I come from a working class background. My parents didn't go to college. My parents, I can say this with love, because I understand where they were coming from. They did not want me to go to school. They did not want me to go to college. They weren't interested in me going beyond high school. So there wasn't a lot of support for that. I certainly didn't know anybody who was making movies. Remember, we're talking about the 1970s, so nobody had cameras. We didn't have access to anything. It was super expensive to make a film. However, my father made home movies, but I wasn't allowed to touch his camera because I would break it. So I wasn't allowed to make movies with those cameras, but I would watch him make movies, and I stood by his side and I would talk to him about films, and he loved watching. My whole family loved watching movies. So they instilled in me a great love of like interactive movie watching. Like, you know, like when you used to go to the movie theater in Times Square and yell at the screen, my parents yelled at the screen, argued with the characters. You know, I did the same. So we were very, very involved with movies. But going to film school was not something that I thought I could do really until I met my husband. And I was going to Queens College, majoring in media, and he mentioned New York University, and I laughed and I said, I can't afford it. And back in those days, which sad to say is not as true today, you could take out a loan that in your lifetime you could pay off. I'm not sure how that works today. So I was super, super incredibly fortunate that without any big support on a personal front or anything, and the support finally came from my partner, whom I later married for many reasons, including that support. I think that got me to film school. I needed to go to film school because I needed to enter a community of people that wanted to make movies or tell stories or whatever. I know many people who don't go to film school that are wonderful filmmakers. John Sayles is one of them, my mentor. He never went to film school. But I think that you have to decide what you need. If you already have a group of people and you're making movies with your iPhone, you're going to save yourself a lot of money if you don't go to film school. However, your film education needs to be that you watch movies, and lots of them, because that's where we come from. Those are our cinematic ancestors. We need to study our cinematic ancestors. And then we can, you know, the technical, there's wonderful workshops where you can learn all the technical stuff. But we need to learn about what came before us so we can move forward.
Thank you. And our last question is from Giancarlos. From all these stories you shared, has there been anyone in the film industry who opposed you because you were a powerhouse of creative rebellion?
A lot of people. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and also when I started my career, I was younger, and my personality was a little more, not as shy as I am now. I was much less. But so yeah, I mean, I think I was often pretty straightforward about what I thought and what I felt. And, you know, some of that stuff is very good, and some of that is really interesting, because when you're working in the corporate world, which is what lots of like studio productions are, people get a little concerned if you're a straight shooter, because then they wonder how they can make sure they're going to get the product that they need. So I think I've learned to finesse some of that. And I actually learned a lot from one of my mentors was Jonathan Demi. And if you just Google him, and I haven't actually Googled him, but if there's any video on him on YouTube of speaking, he's the most charismatic, charming guy. And I watched him charm studio executives. And that's really, you know, if you want to work within that system, because you've got a story that needs the system in order to exist. Not all stories need it, but if you're in a situation where you need to work within the system, there's ways to get what you need to get done and have people feel comfortable. So that's what I'm learning in my old age.
Wow. That was wonderful. Thank you. I mean, great questions, everyone.
Yeah, you really good questions.
And the answers were, of course, magnificent and inspiring, as always. So, you know, one of the things that we haven't talked about is this particular moment when actually films are not being made, right? Or
yeah, well, so, oh no, like COVID not being made. I think there's little stories here and there of a couple of movies made in bubbles. So a little bit, or reshoots, like a film that almost finished before COVID, and they had a week left of shooting, and they just went back and really hibernated with this little crew and were able to do it. And some soap operas, I think.
Yeah, but there's certainly such big limitation placed on the medium in which you work creatively. And, you know, one can say that we always have challenges. These are particularly challenging challenges. But I was wondering whether you could share, particularly with so many of our beginning writers, aspiring filmmakers, creative people, what does it take to nurture and sustain creative work? Because that is one of the big challenges. And, you know, regardless whether you're living in a pandemic, and sometimes things that seem pretty smooth, but to do the sustained work that then brings you to the point where you have this large body of work, what does it take?
Love, and curiosity, and nurturing your love for your art and your curiosity. And I feel like when times get tough, sometimes we become punishing to ourselves. And I think sometimes, you know, when you talk about these things, you're really talking about life, right? Like, how do you sustain yourself during these times? But in terms of like creative work, for me, I feel like on a bad day, I think everything is horrible. And I think anything that would come out of me isn't good enough. And it will be like, whatever. And I've had those, I think I write in our 100-word group. I think I wrote once where I did, like, kind of destroyed a whole beginning of a story. I was like so angry. I just like, you know? So on a bad day, you got to give yourself the opportunity to have the bad days. Because then on a good day, all you can hope for is like, to really be kind to yourself that you had that bad day, and kind of forgive yourself for the bad day. And then just rack focus, like you're on a lens, racking from the problem that is this COVID hell that we're living through, rack focus to what it is. There's something that you want to say or do that's beyond this problem. It exists further away. And if you rack focus on that, then you'll wake up your curiosity about your subject matter. You'll start researching it. You'll start telling the world that you're going to do a project about this. People will start saying, really, you're going to do a project about this? I love that idea. Maybe so-and-so can help you when you get, like, if you start, first feel good about it yourself and then start sharing it with people. All we're doing right now is we're planting seeds and nurturing these little green shoots. That's all we can do right now. We can't harvest. We can't pick anything. We're not allowed to yet. We can't do it. Unless God bless, I so envy like novelists, like you can sit there and create and you don't need to go out and get 100 people to help you. So and of course the grass is greener, on your side. And I'm sure you can tell me all the hell you go through with this. But on my thing, we are people dependent. So we have to sit tight. But I am writing, I am sharing with the people that I know that are looking for financing. I'm doing these things, and that's what makes me get up in the morning, because I'm excited about what I'm working on. And I found, and I put aside the projects that were like, meh, that I was maybe doing for somebody, meh, for this person. I put them all aside with COVID. And I went for like, what makes me feel happy when I work on it? What makes me feel happy? And those are the things that are asking your attention. They're drawing you to them. They're making themselves very attractive to you. So you should go to them,
Thank you so much. And Nancy, I think I speak on behalf of everyone that your words have nurtured us and will sustain us and guide us as we continue to do our creative work, whatever form or shape that may take.
We need it, people. We need it. We need you. Yes. Yes.
So thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you,
Thank
David.
you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone, for coming. And we will have more events. This was a wonderful, wonderful first event for us to begin. And frankly, I forgot we were on Zoom.
So we want you to keep checking our website, njcu.edu/arts, because we'll be having more. And so, and Nancy will have you come back for more things too.
Wonderful.
And I want to thank our team, Anna Carhart, theater manager, Justin Tinker, our technical director, Sabrina Lee Saballo, our box office manager, and Zoom maven. So thank you again. On Tuesday, September 22nd from 12:30 to 2, we are going to have a virtual artist talk with Dr. Winifred McNeil on her solo exhibition, The Air and the Space, at Art House Gallery. And that's, and then Thursday, November 19th, Dr. Junta is bringing a conversation with Crystal A. Satal, who is an NJCU alumna and author of Secrets We Kept, 3 Women of Trinidad. So please join us again and hope you have an inspiring day. Nancy, you've inspired us to go out and do some great work.
Great, go take a walk.
Thank you.
Thank you.